Today we're back in the wood shop and I'm showing you how to make this pillory. Could be a great Halloween decoration or, you know, just because you want one. Alright, well, I have a monstrous hangover, so what better time to mess with power tools, but I think I can get through this without losing any digits. Anyway, today, as you saw in the introduction, we are making a pillory. First of all, I should explain the difference between stocks and a pillory because they're a little bit different. Stocks are just boards that would hold the feet in place and not particularly a torture method, just a method of restraint. Maybe you throw tomatoes at them or something. The pillory holds the head and the wrists. It's a taller device and more of a torture device. Anyway, whatever you prefer to call them, we're making one today. This is a pretty simple build and I could probably actually get by without any woodworking plans, but I do have plans just to make things a little bit easier. In fact, I downloaded this set of plans from Steve Ramsey on the Woodworking for Mere Mortals channel. I'll link to his YouTube channel down in the What's It as well, so you can find these plans if you want to make the same design that I'm making. Of course, I never follow plans 100%, but this is a pretty simple build, so mine's going to come out pretty close to the same as Steve's. And like I said, it's a pretty simple build. I'm going to be able to do most of the cuts on the miter saw. I'm going to need the jigsaw for one thing. If you have one, you could use a bandsaw instead, but I think most of us are going to do this with a jigsaw. Steve used a router table for some things. I don't have one of those because I don't have a lot of space, but I'll be able to do without. But really, it's just a couple of boards, a miter saw, some screws, glue if you want to, although I think I'm not going to bother. And the nice thing about working on Halloween decorations for woodworking is you can go straight to the cull lumber bin at your local orange or blue home center and save a lot of money by getting cheap, crappy lumber that turns out to actually work even better for this sort of project because it's a Halloween decoration, it's a torture device, it's not meant to look nice like fine woodworking, it's meant to be sort of thrown together and maybe aged, so bad lumber is good in this case. So let me show you what boards you need. You're going to need some 1x4s, you're going to need 4 of those. You're actually going to need 4 lengths of about 55 inches or so, but unfortunately that's a little more than half of a standard 8-foot board, so you're going to end up needing 4 of them. I've got a couple of furring strips that I had left over. In fact, this one is just a piece of one, a scrap board, but it's long enough, so I'm going to be able to use those. You're also going to need 4 2x4s, and here again is where you can save by using this really crappy lumber, but it still works for this sort of project. And then you're going to need a 2x6 and a dowel. This is an 1.25 inch dowel. The precise diameter doesn't really matter, but a nice hefty one is what you want. And then in addition to the miter saw, you're going to need a drill of some sort. I may use my drill press for some of this, or I may just use the hand drill. I haven't decided yet. I'll figure that out once I get into the project. But speaking of getting into the project, I think it's time to start cutting some boards. Okay, I'm going to start by measuring out and cutting the legs for this pillory. And the way this construction is going to go is it's going to be a 2x4 sandwiched in between 2 of these 1x4s. The way I'm going to do it, because I have some different boards, I have some actual, not great, but I guess we would say select or prime 1x4s, as well as some furring strips. I'm going to use one of the good boards and 1 furring strip for each of the legs so that it sort of matches front and back. Anyway, the 2x4 gets cut to 42.5 inches and the 1x4 gets cut to 55.5 inches. So I'm going to measure all those out and we'll cut those and then we'll screw them all together. Okay, there's 55.5 inches. We'll make a mark. Use my square and I'll make a line. And the nice thing about this is I'm not worried about things being exact. If they're within a 16th or an 1/8, we should be good enough. Again, this is meant to be a hastily assembled, perhaps aged torture device, so precision is not the most important thing as long as everything's close enough that it all still fits together. Alright, let's go ahead and make the cut. And there we go, 55.5 inches. We're going to need 3 more of these, as well as some of the 2x4s. So let's go ahead and measure everything out and get them all cut. One tip that'll help make everything match, make everything the same length, is once you've cut one of these to length, instead of using your measuring tape to measure out again, use the one that you've already cut to length, line up the ends so that they match, and then you can use this as a reference, draw a line on the other board, and they'll come out exactly the same length. Like so. And as you can see, using that method, these come out exactly the same length. Makes it a little bit easier to make sure that everything matches up nicely and we're not going to end up with one side much taller than the other. Okay, now that these are cut, before I screw everything together, these boards, these 1x4s, also need 2 1.25-inch holes that we're going to put the dowel through, and that's going to be able to serve as sort of a hinge and a latch for the pillory. I want to put these holes before I screw everything together so that I know everything will line up. So what I'm going to do is, I've clamped these boards together, I'm going to mark out where the holes go, and then I'm going to go over to the drill press and drill through both of these boards at the same time. Then I'm going to do the same thing with the other pair, and presumably, as long as I'm careful with my measurements, this is the one step where I really do need to be precise, but as long as I'm careful with my measurements, everything should still line up. Okay, I'm going to make my first mark here at 5 3/4, and then another one at 10 1/4. There we go. Then I'll mark off the center and use my square to draw a line there. And now I know exactly where I should drill my holes. And now we're here at the drill press so I can put those holes through. Before I do that, I just got to get something off my chest. I was just here getting everything set up and my phone rang. As it does, no problem. Except it was a scam call. I don't even know what I'm going to say about that, but those people really just... Anyway, back to the woodworking. Woodworking is much more relaxing and peaceful and better for the sanity than scam phone calls. Now I've got my drill press set so the stop will go through these boards but not into the plate, so everything should be ready to go. I like this drill press because it's laser guided, so I know I'm hitting my center point. Not that it matters if it's precise, but I'm doing my best anyway. And here we go. I should point out this is a 1 1/4-inch hole that I'm drilling. And we're ready for the second one. And finished. So now we just need to do the same thing on the other set of 2 of these 1x4s. I'm going to do that off camera, so you'll see me in a few minutes. Alright, I've decided that before I start actually putting anything together, I want to go ahead and cut all the rest of the pieces. That's really not a good idea. Generally you want to cut things as you build things so that if there are slight divergences in measurements and things, you can adjust as you go. But the way this one is going, I think I just want to cut everything first and I'm going to take my chances. So hopefully it works out. You'll find out in a minute or so whether it works out well, because if it doesn't, you're going to see me in a few minutes troubleshooting and trying to salvage something. But I think I can make this work. Alright, so I'm going to start with this 2x6. I need two pieces out of that, one 44 inches and one 42 inches in length. So I'm going to start by measuring out 44 inches. That's right there. And I'll cut that off and then I'll measure a 42. Two is right there. And there's 42, one of my favorite numbers. And now for more of these 2x4s. This one I need 33 inches, and this is the one that's got a spot right here that's sort of beat up, so I'm trying to figure out exactly which spot I want of this board. In fact, what I think I actually want this sort of bad spot. I think it's going to add character. So I'm going to take off the good end, and then I'm going to measure 33 inches of this sort of split, rotten, not rotten, but sort of funky looking piece. I do want decent ends though, because it's going to get attached to some other boards with just butt joints, so I want a decent, reasonably square end, and I think I can do that if I cut right here. And we'll cut that piece. Okay, and for the rest of these 2x4s, I need 4 that are 32 inches long and 4 that are 14.5 inches long. I'm going to go ahead and cut those off camera, and you'll see me when they're done. Alright, the next thing I need are some dowels. As I said before, this is 1.25 inch diameter dowel. I've cut this one to about 5 inches in length. I need 3 of these, and then I'm going to cut one a little longer, maybe around 6 inches. I set up a stop block on my miter saw to make duplicate cuts on these easier, so I'm going to go ahead and cut the other 2 of these 5-inch ones. So that's those. Now I'm just going to shimmy the stop block over a little bit to make one a little bit longer. I'm aiming for around 6 inches, but it doesn't matter. Precision's not important here. I think that might be a little bit more than 6 inches, but that's fine. And there they are. These are what's going to hold a lot of the stuff together. Now, while I'm here, I noticed a problem. Some of these 14.5 inch pieces have some printing on them that I don't want because that's not going to be period appropriate. Some of the other ones do as well, but the other ones are going to be sandwiched together and I can hide the printing on the inside. This is going to be visible, so even though I'm not sanding most of this because I like the rough look, I am going to sand the print off of these. Now, normally for this job I would use my random orbit sander, and that'll take this off in no time at all. But since I only need to do a couple of these and I want to leave most of the stuff rough, I don't really want to get that out, so I've just got some 60 grit sandpaper that'll take that right off. On second thought, that's a little slow, and I don't actually care if this is distressed, so I've decided to get my angle grinder with a sanding wheel on it. That takes this off in no time at all. And leaves us looking a little distressed, which is appropriate for this project. There it is. Okay, so now we need to cut pieces like this. I did this one off camera. We need actually 4 of these, so I'm going to show you how I did it. These are the 14.5 inch pieces. I just need to cut a 45-degree miter at the edge, so they end up being slightly less than 14.5 inches. Precision's not important, they just need these miters and to be approximately the same length. So what I've done is I've set my miter saw to 45 degrees. It does have a laser guide. I'm not sure if you can see it on camera, but it has a laser guide, which I normally don't use, but in this case it's sort of a squirrely cut, so I am using the laser guide to make sure I'm not wasting too much of the wood that I actually want to use. So we'll just put this here, adjust my laser a little bit so it's actually pointing in the right place. That looks pretty good, and we'll go ahead and make the cut. And we end up with that. We do the same thing to the other side, making sure that we cut out the same side so that it doesn't end up with a lopsided piece. We need it to look like this with the cutout on the same side on both ends. So we'll just do the same thing to the other end of this piece. And there we go. Now we have 2. We need a total of 4. I'm going to go ahead and cut the other 2 off camera. So next time you see me, this will all be done. Okay, everything is cut. There's a couple more cuts that come later after some things are put together, but most of the pieces are cut. It's time to start assembling. These will be the legs with a 2x4 in between 2 1x4s. So I'm going to use some clamps to hold things together. I have these dowels to make sure that these holes will properly align. I'm going to clamp it together, then I'm going to screw all of this stuff together. Very important that the bottom is flush so that it won't wobble in a weird way. And make sure they're aligned, and I'll stick a clamp on this end as well. Alright, and I'm doing this one piece at a time. So far it looks pretty good. I'm going to put a couple of pilot holes and just put a few screws in here. I'm also marking out where other pieces will go so that I don't end up crisscrossing screws and trying to drive a screw into where I've already put one. So I am not going to put screws in that region. Nor am I going to put screws right there. Other than those 2 spots near the base and near the middle, I can put screws wherever I want. So I'm going to drill a few pilot holes and get it done. I'll also point out I put a lot of screws in this, partially because this furring strip was a little bit warped, so I'm putting extra screws to sort of hold it flush to the other piece. Now, same thing with this other piece, the key difference being that I am putting the dowels through these holes to make sure that they will align when everything is assembled, because that's going to be important. Nice snug fit. There's the dowels. Make sure the end is all lined up. And again, I'll clamp it, drill some pilot holes, and put some screws. And there we go. The clamps anymore. Don't need to leave the dowels in for now. Come back to those. But there is one leg of the pillory. I'm going to do the same thing with the other one. I'll do that off camera and then I'll come back. Okay, both legs are done. Let me set that to the side. Now we need to do the feet, and those are just the 32-inch 2x4s. All I'm doing is screwing 2 of them together to add some weight to it. So I'm going to do those 4 2x4s in pairs. Just make sure the ends are flush, and I'll drill some pilot holes and put some screws in those, same like I've done on all the others. Alright, and the feet are done. Okay, now the feet are done. I just need to attach the legs to the feet. So I've scooched back to give myself a little bit of room above, so I'm not hitting the garage door. This is probably going to be the squirreliest part of assembly, because I need to hold this vertical, and I'll use my square to keep it square, and then I'm going to drive screws at an angle. So I think what I'm going to do is mark where the screws go, drive at an angle, pilot holes through the leg, and then I'll attach everything permanently. That'll do. Apologies for the noise. The neighbors are out. Seems like every time I try to film something out here, it turns into a convention on the street. But I'm going to do the other one off camera anyway. Okay, both of those are assembled, and they're still a little bit wobbly, but that's okay because these braces are going to go on and provide a lot of support. Once again, my apologies for the noise in the background. I can't control what my neighbors do, and they always pick the least convenient time to do their yard work. Anyway, all I need to do now is just put these are the 45-degree miters, so these are going to go on at 45 degrees. I'm just going to put 2 screws in top, 2 screws in bottom, straight in, and that should provide enough support to hold this thing all together. Alright, that's one done. That'll hold up, very sturdy. It will support some weight. I'll do the other one off camera as I usually do. Okay, as you can see, the legs are finished. They stand up fine. The next piece is this cross brace that goes in between the two. I just need to screw this in to this piece, and then I'll slide it up to the next one and screw it in there. And I'm using approximately the same method. I'm going to put some angled screws here and here. Well, unfortunately my camera battery died while I was doing this, but as you can see, this cross brace is now on one side. Now I'm just going to prop this up next to the other one and put it on the other side, or attach the other side, I should say. I'm just going to use my phone as a level so I can get this where I want it to be. And again, it doesn't need to be perfect, but approximately level, let's say. Okay, I had a better idea. I put this brace in to hold everything in place. Now I should have an easier time muscling this into position. That'll do. Okay, next thing I need to do is put holes through these 2x6 boards so that I can put dowels in and lock everything in place. I'm going to use the same 1 1/4 inch Forstner bit that I used on the drill press, but in this case I already have them in position, and I'm going to drill through the holes this way. I will either drill all the way through, or I will at least mark the location if I decide I want to go back to the drill press to finish the job. In fact, I'm thinking I'm going to go back to the drill press, so I'm just going to go, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch into each of these, just enough that I can make sure I line up properly on the drill press. Now I'm going to do this next part off camera, but I'm just going to pop this Forstner bit back in the drill press and drill the holes the rest of the way through. Alright, it's day 2 and it's almost finished. As you can see, structurally it's basically done. This needs to be arranged so that it can swing open. Some of these dowels that I'm using to hold it together need to be sanded to allow for a little bit more wiggle room. This one will be the hinge, so it needs to be sanded a little bit just so this can swing. And this is going to be the one that you take in and out to open and close it. It also needs to be sanded down a little bit so it's easier to take in and out. In addition to that, I just need to cut out a large hole here in the center and 2 smaller holes here on the side so I can put my neck and wrists through. I have measured the approximate circumference of my neck, which is about my thumbs and middle fingers around, and I went around and found a suitable item that I can use as a reference for that circumference. Same thing for my wrists, and I've drawn center lines on the boards so that I can put them exactly where I want them. So now I just need to take this board, or rather these boards out, use the jigsaw to cut those holes, sand down the dowels, and then if I decide I want to stain this, I still haven't quite decided. If I want to stain it, that'll be the last step. I've discovered that the tube that a bottle of Lefroy 10-year scotch comes in is approximately the correct diameter for my wrist. I can fit in, it's a tight fit, but it's about right. So this will be what I use as a reference for these holes. And the roll of paper towels is approximately the same circumference as my neck, so it'll go here and be my reference for that. So now we just line everything up and draw our marks all the way around. And neaten it up a little bit. And same thing for both of these wrist holes. Now, depending on your purposes, you may need to be more or less precise with these cuts. If you want to actually hold somebody, it needs to be just the right diameter for the wrist, but not the hand. Same goes for the neck. If you don't care if you're actually holding somebody, if it is just a Halloween decoration, as mine is, precision matters less. It just needs to look good and be big enough to fit around wrist and neck. So that's what I have in mind. Now I just need to take all these dowels out, take these boards out, cut them out on the jigsaw. And I don't mind hitting it with the hammer to get the dowels out because it should look distressed anyway. So if I leave some hammer marks, so be it. And just to be safe, because I don't entirely trust the alignment to be perfectly symmetrical, I'm going to make some marks so that I can make sure that the boards get back into the correct alignment. That way I just know that I put the boards back exactly how they were, because if anything's slightly off center, if I put it backwards, it might not fit again, and I don't want to re-drill these holes. Okay, so here's the first board. I've also marked on the corner where I think I need to round off to make this a hinge. If I end up needing to cut a little bit more, I'll take it back off and do that, but I think this mark should do it. And of course, I've got the half circle marks here, here, and here, so I just need to use the jigsaw and cut those out. I've chosen a blade that's designed for fast cutting. It's not going to give you the cleanest edge, but I don't care for this project. That seems pretty good. Of course, it's got sharp edges. Because I'm going to use this on myself, I will round these edges off with some sandpaper later. While I'm here, I'm going to take this corner, and then I'll get the other. There's one done. Now just the other one. Okay, that's both of them done. Let me put them back in the base and just see how everything fits. That's looking pretty good. I think I'm going to have some minor adjustments to make. I notice this doesn't swing quite all the way up, so I want to take just a little bit more off of that corner. But in terms of the overall function, I may want to widen this neck hole just a little bit because that's a bit of a tight squeeze. But overall, I think I'm pretty happy with this. I'll do a little bit more work off camera. I'm going to take a little bit more off of this corner over here to make the hinge work a little bit better. Turns out I don't actually need to sand this dowel down. It swings just fine. I am going to sand this one down, the one that goes here, so it can slide in and out, and you can take it in and out to open and close it. I'm also going to widen the neck hole just a little bit. I'm going to do all of that off camera, so next time you see me, this will be just about finished. Alright, let's see how that is now. I think that's good enough. Still a little loose on the wrists and tight on the neck, but it fits. I'm happy with that. Lock everything back in place. Now I do want to take some sandpaper and just take the sharp edges off of these, just for my own safety. Not that I think this is something medieval torturers would care about, but I'm going to put myself in it. I care. So this is all I'm going to do. Just a little bit of sandpaper, take the sharp edges off, and then basically done. There's some marks and things that I want to take off. I also want to distress it a little bit, so I'm going to get the angle grinder back out with the sanding wheel and I'll take these marks off and just leave some marks of my own, make it look the way I want it to. Okay, now I just have some of my pencil marks, and there are some marks from the lumber mill, some things that I don't want on a piece that's supposed to be a period piece, so I'm just going to use my angle grinder with a sanding wheel and both distress this a little bit and make sure that all of those marks are off. That shouldn't take long at all. And there it is. I think that's just how I want it. I'm still going back and forth a little bit on whether I want to put a stain on it. An important thing to remember is a wood stain is not a wood finish. I don't care about a finish on this. I don't care about protecting it from the elements. It's going to be inside anyway. And if it ages a little bit, all the better. I was thinking about a stain just to darken it and make it look more antique. I might still do that. But honestly, I think for today, for this season, I'm not going to. You can always go back and add a stain later, and honestly, I'm pretty happy with the way this one looks, so for now, I think I'm just going to leave it as is. But, as you can see, the hinge works, it stays up, I can lock myself in it. A little harder to do it yourself, but I can lock myself in. If I had a free hand, I could put this over there and lock it in place so that I wouldn't be able to get out. Just like so. Still a bit of a tight squeeze, but it fits. At some point I may, what Steve Ramsey did with his, he put a chain on this so it would just hang from the front. That way it wouldn't get detached or lost. I may or may not do that at some point. For now, I think I'm just going to leave it as is. So overall, I'm happy with it. There is a pillory for Halloween or indeed for whatever purpose. Let me just remind you, as always, do all the YouTube things, subscribe, ring the notification bell, leave me a comment, share with all your friends. All of that wonderful stuff helps me grow this channel, which in turn helps me make more videos for y'all. So I appreciate anything you can do. I'll be back with more Halloween stuff, I'm sure. I can't imagine this will end up being the last of my Halloween videos this year, but even if it is the last of my Halloween videos, I'll be back with more horror-related goodness in the near future, so stay tuned. But until then, take care and stay scared.